The next current hot topic is, should we end what we're doing right now? What I'm doing right now by talking at my computer in my basement instead of being in the classroom with you. Should we end the government mandated social distancing requirements now? On one side, you have liberals saying that no, we should not end them, that they're effective and they're working. On the other side, you have many conservatives arguing that no, this is destroying our economy and we need to do something now. So I'm going to try to look at both sides on this. I'm going to start with the conservative argument first this time. And many conservatives argue that we should roll back the government enforced social distancing requirements that were placed starting in March in reaction to the pandemic of the COVID-19 virus. Our schools and schools across the country were shut down. Many businesses, non-essential businesses, were shut down. This has led to a massive amount of unemployment, where we now are at depression levels of unemployment and over 14%. This has led to our stock market essentially to crash, and all these things that are negative are happening because people are being forced to stay home from work, from limiting their social interactions, not going to restaurants, not going into sporting events, all these different things where this disease could spread. And the conservatives that are protesting this, and remember, this isn't every conservative, and it's not every liberal. None of these issues are blanket issues where everybody agrees on one end. So the conservatives argue that the cure for this virus, the social distancing, the quote quarantine, is far worse than the actual disease. They argue that you're destroying our economy in exchange for something that doesn't blanketly affect everybody. We're not talking about something that has a 90% fatality rate, and that we should allow people to continue to go to work, continue to live a normal life, and only restrict those who are at most at risk, the elderly, those with pre-existing conditions, to follow the social distancing requirements and stay home. That those who are most at risk, they're the ones who are quarantined. Everybody else goes and continues living their lives. They argue that these unnecessary restrictions are destroying our economy, and there's definitely a lot of damage that has been done. This is definitely the worst economic crisis that we've faced since 2008, and unemployment levels that we have not seen since the 1930s during the Great Depression. And they also argue that we don't take these measures, the social distancing measures, for other contagions like the flu or SARS that are just as dangerous. Why are we doing it for this one? It doesn't make sense. We millions of people die from the flu every year. Why are we don't shut down all businesses during the flu season? And they argue that if we allow everyone to intermingle and pick up the virus as they're getting around it, eventually we'll get a herd immunity. People will pick up the antibodies to be able to fight this, and it'll reduce the ability of COVID-19 to be so infectious. Lastly, they argue the government is infringing on essential natural rights, the freedom of movement, the freedom to make a living, the freedom to make your own decisions with your health and your body. And then the government is acting in a way that's beyond their rights in the Constitution. So that's the argument of why we should end it. Let's get into why we should continue it. They argue that rolling back the government-enforced social distancing requirements too quickly would result in a whole resurgence of this illness, of this virus. Liberals argue that basically all the sacrifice would be for nothing if we release the social distancing too quickly and try to go back to normal when this disease is still around and there's far too many people that are contagious with it. And they argue that not everybody who is carrying COVID-19 shows symptoms of it. That in fact, a large group of the people who are carrying this horrible virus are asymptomatic, meaning that they would be spreading it without realizing it. They wouldn't be showing signs of illness. They wouldn't be showing signs of sickness. They could go a few weeks carrying it to many, 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 many people, who then would carry it to many, many, many people, and then to many, many, many more people. So these asymptomatic carriers is a real concern. You can't just say, all right, if you feel sick, stay home. Well, people that are carrying don't necessarily feel sick. And this is a potentially fatal disease, not just for those who are elderly, not just those who have pre-existing health conditions, but for anybody. There have been many people of multiple age groups who were healthy who have died from this horrible virus. So not putting these restrictions in place will result in more people dying. And also, it will overtax our overly taxed already medical system. You hear how difficult it is for our first responders, our doctors, our nurses, our paramedics, our police officers who are right in the front of this, trying to keep our society running and trying to keep the people who are ill getting treatment. And if we don't hold back these restrictions, we're going to run out of hospital beds. We're going to run out of respirators. We're going to run out of a means of being able to treat people who are sick. And that also means that there's less treatment for people who have not COVID-19 related illnesses. So I trip and fall and smash my head. I would normally go to the hospital, but there's no hospital beds available to me because this outbreak is so bad, then I'm not getting treated either. Also, a big part of the liberal argument is that COVID-19 isn't like the flu or other viruses, that is far more contagious than these viruses, and it's far more deadly. Because asymptomatic people can be carrying it to those who get it, but also B, that there's been a wide range of people who have acquired this illness and have died. That it can spread much more rapidly. If we look right now, the COVID-19 in 3 months has taken far more lives than the flu did in 6. So it all bears out that it is far more dangerous, but also let's not forget that the flu and many of those other viruses do have vaccines, which then slow down the rate of infection. Liberals also counter that the road to herd immunity, similar to what we see in Sweden, if we do that in the United States with the population density that we have in areas like the New York, New Jersey area, California, Washington, D.C. metro area, Seattle metro, all these large city areas, that if we do that, that the road to getting that herd immunity, A, is not guaranteed, and B, would be paved with many deaths. And that's just not acceptable to try to get to this point where everybody is immune from exposure. And in the meantime, many people are getting sick and dying. We don't know what the long-term effects are going to be for people who have been affected. That if there's going to be lifelong effects with their respiratory system, so on and so forth. So is this something we want to gamble? They also argue the conservative argument that this is an infringement on freedoms, that the government in times of emergency does have the power to restrict freedom of movement, freedom of your profession, to make a living, to shut down industries. During World War II, curfews were put in effect, mandated changeover of industries happened. A mandated rationing happened. There was restrictions on freedoms during a war, during a crisis. And this is a crisis, liberals counter, that warrants the government putting these restrictions in place. They also argue that, in regards to the economy, that the effects on the economy would be far worse if we did not put the social distancing protocols in effect. That if you had people going to work that were ill, it would spread very rapidly and quickly through that workplace. That you could see entire businesses shut down due to illness and shut down due to people not being able to work because they are, you know, either sick or deceased. Um, they also argue that while the damage to the economy is horrible and terrible, that an economy can be rebuilt, it can be recovered, it can be restored. That we have recovered from other financial crises like the Great Depression and the financial crisis of 2008. It's never easy, it's always painful, but it can happen. But the lost lives due to this illness can never be replaced. And if those lost lives, especially, count into the hundreds of thousands, if not millions, we're talking about many, many people who are now gone. The effect of that would be devastating to our society. So that's both sides of the argument. What I'd like you to do now is choose one of the two issues we discussed, the impeachment or the social distancing, and write your thoughts on it in the comment section below. I want to see your feedback and what you think on the issue, and if it's one that you're interested in arguing where you stand on it so far with this early stage of research into it. We'll explore all these issues in greater detail once we get to our debates. Thanks for watching.